to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everyone. Moving on to item number 2, comments from the public. Is there any non-agendized public comments from the audience? Seems like we have a full house of staff today. So seeing none, moving on to item 3, corrections to the agenda or consent calendar. None? Looking down the row here, nothing? Do we have a motion to adopt consent calendar?
I'll move adoption of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. And that motion passes unanimously.
Great. All right, moving on. No items moved forward from consent. Moving on to 6A, purchase of a new case backhoe. Cliff.
Time to replace another piece of equipment. We got our useful life out of the old one we got now.
Is that the one that's getting sold?
Yes.
Doesn't run anymore?
Oh, it still runs, but the back end's about to fall off again. So that doesn't do much good when you're dragging it out of the station. But anyway. What I'm asking for today is get another 590 case SN backhoe, and that's equipment, case dealer through the sourceful business process. Sum of $178,839.63. That's not including tax.
That's your presentation. We're good? Any questions from the
I can go on. Wait, you know. It's short and sweet.
Yeah, I mean,
If you got something to say, please share. But
so essentially, we're replacing the one that's going up to.
Going out to bid. It's been budgeted for a little while now, and since 24, I believe. It's been replaced our 2003 Cat 430 backhoe. 2003. So the 2003, it doesn't meet quality standards, air quality, or anything like that. It's just worn out.
What action would you like us to consider? Sorry.
what's the shelf life of these? I mean,
22 years.
Normally on equipment, it goes 7 to 17 years.
And then,
resale value on this one, I was not impressed by what we got for our last one, which I believe is still here. Do you remember what we got for that? 16,000, I think.
So the one that you have up on the consent is, I think, going for $5K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the minimum.
That's the minimum. Okay.
That's the minimum.
Okay.
Starting price for it. And so I'm guessing it's going to go between 5 and 12 for this one, because it can't really be used on the work on the back end. Okay, that's fixed. It's been fixed once. So, and like I said, we've looked into electric ones, and there really isn't any out there. They built them, they've tried them, they've taken them back, still researching it. It's just not there yet.
Any more questions from the board? Any questions from the public or comments from the public? Seeing none, what board action would you like us to consider?
I'd like to approve the board to approve the purchase of new Case 590 backhoe from NS Equipment Case through Sourcewell Purchasing Authority, bid contract 032119 CNH-1 with a cost of $178,839.63, not including tax.
Okay, just a note in the agenda, there's a different value there. I just wanted to.
$178,025.67. Yeah, I did. We've got two different prices going here.
Just want to make it official. Do we have the right number in there? Okay. All right. Do we have a motion?
A motion.
Second.
My mistake, that was the price of the backhoe I purchased prior to this one.
Ah, I'm getting a little better deal, huh?
Yeah.
Very good.
Got a little better deal.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 6B, purchase of new pump for Luther Pass Pump Station. Okay, Jeremy coming up. All right, going to tackle the pump.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have a chance, or actually, good afternoon. Jeremy Rockedale, Field Operations Supervisor. Come to you guys today to trying to replace pump number 3 at Luther. It's quite old. It's the original case. It's in '68. It's not worthy of being rebuilt. We'd like to get a newer, robust pump with stainless steel workings. Actually, a stainless steel frame, pump frame. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look over the documentation. I got in the packet. But do you have any questions? Sorry about that. So we tried our best to get it back together in February, and we had a final report on the repairs that were made back in February. Right now it's running. We don't know how long it will run, but we feel it would behoove the district to replace it for longevity, and it's a vital infrastructure for the district. I'll let you want me to ask for authorization. I mean,
I want to see if the board has any questions for you.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. I'm just curious, so like if the fire were to go through and take out that entire house pump station out there, what would we do? I guess I'm just curious if we have some ideas on how we would manage.
Honestly, I'm not sure.
It's lost the pump station. Yeah, let's say another caller came through and took us out up there.
I'd call Megan.
The town might be able to.
Do we have like can we like bring in some backup pumps, or is there some other solution that we could figure out a number of solutions?
That's probably what we would look at. We'd have to get some kind of system, that a trailer-mounted pump system that would be strong enough to boost it up over the hill. That's our biggest problem, because you end up at about 600 psi, roughly, going up over the top of the hill. But we have a holding time here in the plant, depending where the fire's at. But that's only depending on the year, a week or two. You know. Yeah. So, you know, I understand there are pumps out there that you can get that have enough pressure to pump something like that over the top, whether you have to run a hardened line. I don't think lay flat will handle the 600 psi, so I'm assuming it's going to be a hardened steel type line or aluminum. But yeah, we'd have to come up with something to come over the top of the mountain, and the generator alone, I don't know if you guys have ever been out there, but it's a size of a diesel trailer. Really good trailer. It's going to be a challenge. That's why we're so concerned about the pumps. We are working now This pump here that we're asking for today has not been ever replaced. It's always just been rebuilt. All of our other pumps have been replaced, so this one is in need of it. It's like we said before, it's like rebuilding a car motor or something. You can only rebuild it so many times, and then it's just, it needs to go back to the manufacturer, refilled in, and then ground out again to factory specs.
Looking at all the pictures here, it looks like it's in pretty bad shape.
Yes. Yeah,
When, prior to California, actually coming over to the summit a few years back, I remember we had, I believe, AD-HOC out there actually taking out a whole bunch of trees that help protect us in case the fire did actually come down the hill.
Yes, AD-HOC was out there and took out a bunch of trees. I had a neighbor that used to live across the street from me, and he was with the Forest Service, and he was in charge of running, I guess, like brush crews. They also came out because if you're looking at the station to the right of it is Forest Service, and they came in and knocked all the willows. It's a big overgrown willow swamp area. They came in and knocked that all out, pushed it out. Now, all the meetings that we've had throughout the years I've been here, the one thing we stress to fire department, Cal Fire, anybody that'll listen to us, is that station has to stay in service. And during the Caldwell fire, I was out there quite a bit, and a lot of the other agencies were cooperating with us and made that a priority. We were over at coordinating in Booster, and if we would have to shut, they were going to shut the natural gas off, which powers our generator inside the station. So we got them to leave it on for a while so we could get water pumping to fight the fire. But it was, everybody met out there, county, fire department, Liberty, everyone. And we all stood out there together to keep things going. So that's a plus for us, that everybody realized the importance of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably a tiered strategy. The first one is fire protection, then we're talking through hardening opportunities as well through a grant. And then I guess for me, like the worst case scenario, if there's any way we can get some kind of, you know, thinking around like what we would do to kind of bring something up and make us.
Can I just add a couple of things? So two things. So we are kicking off the local hazard mitigation plan. So we are focusing on critical facilities. So this would have to be one of them. What can we do in the event of a natural disaster, wildfire, or whatever else? And so we'll try and figure out mitigation measures and maybe implement them in future years. The second thing is we did put money in the budget this year for a contingency plan for Booster Pass. If anything went down on our export system, we have not kicked that off yet. We're a little short-staffed. But we do have budget money available to do that planning for, and it's the entire export system. So if we can't pump out of here to the A line, the B line, Booster Pass, C line, what do we do? How many days do we have? What are our plans in place for that? So we are going to do that work and start that planning work this year, but I just want to point that out.
Good. Well, I just
Identify the manufacturer and the pumps, what it takes to make it happen.
Well, just a quick question on that, I guess, in terms of the duration of time we would have. My assumption would be that if the fire that destroys this pump station is not going to be anybody in town.
That's helpful.
Yeah. No, but I mean,
No,
my point, like, the duration of time we have, like, the modeling with that assumption in mind, because even if it's July 4th, if that burns, nobody will be here.
Yeah.
So the question then is, what is the innate kind of, very few people will be here.
I mean, there's very little evacuation during the Angora fire, so I mean, I don't know.
No, what I'm saying is, but we have an example in terms of what that is. So that would be the model in terms of the future, not what we do on a normal July 4th weekend, right? And I would say, you know, I think that's just an important thing to kind of know. And then, no, I agree. I'm glad that, you know, these comments were raised. I mean, in one of the efficiency meetings, there was a discussion regarding, you know, running exercises in terms of various different emergencies and how we would address them and how we could advance this forward. You know, I think these planning exercises are great, but also not very great because they sit on the shelf. People don't review them. People don't read them. It's kind of irrelevant to have an emergency. I'm a planner. I have a lot of planning in my room and on my desk. And so that being said, what I would like to do is, like, you know, real world exercises where, like, crews and everybody, like, you know, in kind of almost the factions, you know, whether it's football or military, whatever, that you broke down this every single time. And I, you know, no comment now, I think that's amazing, but I think that more so than the plans of what would be of interest to me, that everybody in this room is like, no, we walk through it. This is how we would do it. This is where my car is going to be at every step. Because when that moment comes, we don't want to have any surprises that have never been here before or have everything on plan. Not to say they're not important, but
You gotta practice that.
to the immediacy of the end, the immediacy of now, right? Like I think I would have liked to see this happen forever ago. And I agree there's a lot of work and, fitting all these things in, so I'm very sympathetic, but we can see where I'm going with this in terms of the importance, right? Like we should have that answer if anybody asks. We should know what we would do if anybody asks. And the idea that, oh, we're going to develop a plan, that's not government experts and people don't respect that as an answer. And so we want to advance kind of solution-oriented spaces.
We have gone over some scenarios and discussed different things. That's why you're going to be seeing more of us. You get extra pumps, motors. We do have issues with transformers out there. The station has 3 transformers, I believe it is. And very unique. And they're very unique, but they're also outrageously priced right now with a year or 2 lead time. But if we lost power, we still have a generator. So the biggest thing, and you're right, if there was a big fire, maybe a lot of people would be out of town. That would buy us a lot more time, unfortunately. Having a fire and having people evacuate is never good. But we still have the generator out there, and if everybody unites and protects the station, which the way it looks right now, we've got a pretty good defensible space, but we are working on more. That's the biggest critical issue to us. Because as long as we have the pumps and the generator, we can keep the station going. Now, if a fire is burning and we can't get to the station, we have holding time. But when the fire's out and it's safe to go back in, we can go back in, hopefully fire up the generator, and continue pumping out of the basin. But you're right. And we've also looked, if it's a catastrophic where we lose the station, getting pumps of that size and generators of that size it's always going to be a challenge, whether they're available or not. We'll probably have to go to Vegas or, Sacramento, and then getting them up here takes diesel trucks to get up there, like a 40-foot bed on a diesel truck. So there's a lot of different scenarios that's going to hinder us, but we have looked at them all. It's just, where do you go? So we're starting off now by having the extra pumps, the extra motors. We've been looking at the transformers, but it's never really taken off because you buy something like that, it could sit for 30 plus years, 40 years. And years ago, that didn't work. Those things would just go bad. Well, when you're spending $500,000 to $1 million for a transformer, this got its pluses and minuses. The plus is you have an extra one, but the minus is after 15, 20 years, they're going to be bad. But now I understand that they've gotten better, so we are looking into those also. So you might see us back up there at the board looking for transformers.
For next year.
Yeah. The situation out there isn't great. I mean, we have one station. And aside from purchasing maybe a trailer-mounted pump system to leave out there in an emergency, or buying another generator just to leave out there and sit for X amount of years, it's kind of hard, but we are working on it. And every year.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that. It's just more just thinking through, different scenarios and what might we do and who are our contacts and who might have those types of.
Cliff has contacts for generators. He has contacts for pumps.
Yeah.
We've been looking at all those different situations.
Right.
So we are trying. And
Great.
upgrading this pump, for one, is going to put all newer pumps in the station. We're looking at the extra pumps, extra 1,000, extra 700 horse. So when one goes down, it won't matter if it's 4th of July or what it is. We'll have, the capacity of 4 pumps. So we're starting. Is it ideal? Probably not in a lot of people's eyes, but we're looking at both sides of it, and we will come up with something.
No, I completely understand the limitations, but that's what we do our whole lives is what we wish we could do, and the limitations placed on us, right? So and I would also know we're much further along than we've ever been before as well. So I think in these moments it's always, where we haven't been, but also to know where we were and how far we've come. So, credit to both of you and all the steps you've taken, from the defensive space to the redundancy measures and so forth, so you put the community in better space. And so, I guess it's kind of I have taken a bit of a turn from the pump. The hardening and so I'm good for that.
This is what people should know.
Yeah.
You know, that we are trying. It's just not that easy when you can just run down to Carson and grab a trailer with 3 pumps on it that can pump over the mountain at 600 PSI.
Right.
So, there are limitations, but this is good to get out and talk about it. We are trying, and, we're open to any ideas, you know.
I think our first line of defense is our hardening and our defensible space. All that stuff's a very, very, you know, good first step in just making sure that that defensible space and that hardening is really bulletproof, and hopefully we never have to deal with any kind of situation like that. But it's just like, you never know. You never know. I don't know.
And I'll guarantee you, if we have a fire coming in the basement again, I guarantee there's gonna be a bunch of us up there with fire hoses. I don't know if you have a station.
Hopefully water.
Well,
Anyway, sorry, Jeremy, I just thought you'd want to.
Just kind of a quick comment, just in terms of, you know, kind of the broader scope of it. You know, we're obviously, you know, through the last budgetary process, we're having, you know, discussions, and I won't reiterate all that now, but just, you know, you're right, it's going to be kind of a, you know, how much redundancy do we need, where and how much can we afford, all those kind of different things go into it. But just to make sure that, like, the concerns and concepts you have in terms of redundancy and those priorities are being properly, like, conveyed, so that as we're looking at budgetary realities and thinking about these things, that, you know, that's really been included within that analysis. I'm assuming it is, but just to make that note.
And one thing too, the last time we bought a pump, they were around $300,000 and some odd thousand. Now it's worth $700,000. Now it's up to $700,000. We only had $300 and something budgeted, but we had budgeted an excavator for down in Alpine because we're renting a lot of equipment, so we figured we'd save money by doing that. We took the money from that excavator to do this, to have better reliability up there.
Plus with the long lead times.
Yeah.
Right now with an ARO, I'm looking at 55 weeks, as soon as I get a process PO to them.
Transformers, we'd be looking up to a year wait.
I don't know if you guys knew, but during Caldor Fire, we actually took out, one 700 horse and one 1,000 horse pump and motor out of the station. We actually had the 2 new pumps, and, we stole a pump and a motor for each set. So that way, if we did lose the station, we did have those pumps safe elsewhere.
But back to the pump there, this one, I was out there through a lot of the tear down and the rebuilding of it. It is pretty worn out.
Yeah.
We do think it's essential that we replace it. Now, maybe when we're done with this one, we can send it back in and see about having it kind of rebuilt to factory specs, depending on, you know, if it costs $600,000 to rebuild it and another one's $700,000.
Yeah, we're trying to have a spare full. Right now, with one that's being rebuilt that we came to, a couple months ago, for the 700 horse pump, we'll have that back hopefully by middle summer of next year. We have budgeted for a 1,000 horse motor as a spare and a 700 horse motor as a spare. I'm still working on quotes. As soon as I get those, I'll be coming and seeing you guys for those too as well. But this
Answer a lot of your questions?
But Megan and I are going to start working on getting contingency plans going. It's actually a surprise to me that we haven't had one in place for a long while.
Just want to make a comment real quick. So we are trying to build contingency with getting these spare pumps and motors. And actually today we were out at Luther with Liberty showing them the transformers and trying to see if they have spares or if they have like a connection that we don't have to get spare transformers in case of a failure there. We also did some emergency planning training with Liberty earlier this year on like if there was like a PSPS event and our generator failed, what are we going to do? We got some good ideas from Liberty, so just wanted to add that and that we are working with Liberty to try and find some ways to like help with contingency for this station that aren't going to cost us a bunch of money.
What was your answer on the transformers?
We don't know yet. He was taking pictures of the nameplates. He's going to take a look.
Any more questions, comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, action would you like us to consider, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm requesting the board to authorize the purchase of a new 1,000 horse pump for Luther Pass for the position number 3 from Flowserve with non-witness performance testing and startup assistance in the amount of $701,013. That does not include taxes and sugar. Thank you, guys.
Jeremy. Moving on to item 6C, California Conservation Corps Sponsor Agreement, 2025 Vegetation Management. Laura.
Hi, everyone. Laura Hendrickson, Associate Engineer. I'm actually here to talk about defensible space, so that worked out well. We have a 2025 vegetation management project that we'd like to enter into a sponsor agreement with the California Conservation Corps. This project is fully grant funded. We have support from both the U.S. Forest Service and the California Tahoe Conservancy. The goal of this project is to reduce hazardous fuels and create defensible space at 40 critical facilities between SCPUD, Tahoe City PUD, and North Tahoe PUD. The CCCs have dedicated crews in the Tahoe Basin. They provide experienced vegetation management services. They also give their crew members job training and education during their time here. And we have partnered successfully with the CCCs in the past. Most recently was some vegetation management at the wastewater treatment plant back in 2021. For this project, the CCCs estimate approximately 14,400 hours of working time, plus various maintenance and equipment costs. So their total not to exceed is $482,000. They have an anticipated 6-month working time, and they are ready to start as soon as we give them the notice to proceed. Do you all have any questions?
How many of our facilities are going to be treated of the 40?
I was trying to remember that. I think about 20 are ours, 14 in Tahoe City, and about 6 in North Tahoe. So we do have the majority, and 55% approximately of the lands are on Forest Service, with 45% being either PUD owned, the Conservancy owned, or private ownership. So we are also working to get our private owners on board. South Tahoe PUD has 14 private owners that we needed to contact. So far, we've successfully contacted 8 of those. 7 of them are fully on board. One who lives next to Iroquois Lake, unfortunately, does not want us to enter his property, but he has a fence, so that will be very easy to not do any management on his property. And I sent emails and mailings to the other 6. So still hoping to hear from those, but the most critical was Heavenly Tank, so that's all on Heavenly's property. They're completely on board with this project. And then Christmas Valley Tank is also mostly on private property. And I've communicated with both of them, and they're both on board. So.
And then the facilities that we're treating, have those been ranked as like very high priority?
Yeah, so we worked with Dudas Consultants a few years back before I started here, and they created a full vegetation management plan. They actually also looked at Lukens and Tahoe Keys, so basically every California side water service, and picked the 40 most critical facilities of all of them.
And then the Keys will be working on everybody's land, so it's not just, so the Forest is not waiting on the Forest Service to treat their land.
Okay. Yeah, we're doing all of it.
Kind of goes in the comments from the last generation. Really, the continuation of, what was just discussed today, I think we should offer a little project. I think the last way what we did is we have to make the conditional contact.
Any questions or comments from the public? I just want to echo Nick's comment that I appreciate the work that's being done in the space. Thank you. Seeing none, so what action would you like us to consider?
I'm just to request the board to authorize the general manager to enter into a sponsor agreement with the California Conservation Corps in an amount not to exceed $482,000.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 60, Lake Christopher Golden Bear Sewer Rehabilitation Project. Mark. Is this the one going over Lake Christopher, under Lake Christopher? I guess we'll find out.
Well, I don't want to ruin the surprise for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mark Sealos, Water Resources Manager. I'll be asking for authorization for the General Manager to execute a task order for engineering and planning services for 2 sewer line rehabilitation projects. And these projects are an outgrowth of an emergency action that the district had to complete that started in 2014. And that was the Tahoe Creek pipeline crossing project, when that pipeline was found to be severely undermined and basically threatened imminent failure. It's right next to the lake, and so we needed to deal with that as an emergency project, so we implemented temporary measures that later became permanent measures that required all of the permitting that goes on with work in jurisdictional waters. So we actually didn't close out that project until last year, 2024. And so, yeah, just a little bit of background. So as you know, our sewer system relies mostly on gravity to get the sewage from our houses to low-lying areas where it's then pumped to the wastewater treatment plant pump stations. And these low-lying areas, a lot of the time, are meadows or creeks. And our infrastructure was installed in these areas. When it was installed, the conditions in these areas were very different. And so we had mostly channelized creeks, and we had floodplains that had kind of been blocked with levees, and they didn't experience the natural inundation that they now do. And so after a bunch of restoration projects, so now a lot of our sewer lines that were previously dry are now exposed to either natural channel meandering or to flooding during floodplain activation. And at the same time, we have a lot of sewer lines that were installed to cross creeks, and they were installed below the grade of the creek. And incision over time has caused these concrete encasements or lines to now become exposed. And so after that Tahoe Creek project, we decided to kind of take a systematic look at our sewer and water line crossings throughout our system. And we basically assessed, we hired Stantec to assess the likelihood of failure from like a geomorphic and infrastructure perspective. And what they found was that we have 21 high to extreme risk sewer crossings that are basically identical to the Tahoe Creek project. And so this is a much larger problem than it seemed at the time. And, so obviously we need to do something to address all of these over time. But where do you start with 21 projects? And so I conducted a consequence of failure analysis to kind of take the consequence into account as well. And we came out with these Lake Christopher and Golden Bear gravity main crossings to be the highest priority. And so this Lake Christopher main, it's an asbestos cement pipe that crosses Trout Creek between Plateau Circle and Black Bart. And it was installed back when Lake Christopher was there. And so there wasn't really a creek there at the time. And then when the dam was removed, now it's fully inundated. We haven't been able to get eyes on it. Our underground sewer repair crew can't inspect it because it's totally flooded and inaccessible. And to boot, several sections of that line are exposed, and not even in an encasement. They're just fully exposed in the creek. And so that is an extremely high likelihood of failure, and it would fail directly into the creek there. And then Golden Bear, it has kind of the convenience of being, only a few blocks away from this Lake Christopher site. And so it would be a good project to basically combine and to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But that is right at where the swimming hole is, which you guys have probably been there by the big culvert at Pioneer Trail. And I'm told that the concrete encasement is a good place to sit and have a beer while you watch your family swim there. But seriously, like, you can see it in the creek there. And that was originally installed below grade, and now like 3 or 4 feet of it are exposed. So that shows you how much incision has happened there over time. And so, yeah, in terms of consequence of failure and likelihood of failure, these are 2 of our highest priority sites, and we want to address these first. And we're planning a project to address these, but the best method is really uncertain at the moment. So do we want to armor these in place? Do we want to reroute the gravity sewer? Do we want to install an inverted siphon? Do we need a pump station? These are all things that we don't know what the best solution is going to be. And then in addition to that, the permitting complexity of these ostensibly simple projects is pretty extreme because you're dealing with work in jurisdictional waters, you're dealing with permits from Army Corps of Engineers, State Water Board, CDFW, you're probably going to be dealing with mitigation. And so, these are very complex projects. And so we put out an RFP on April 4th to request engineering services, and that would cover data review, alternatives analysis, public outreach, which we find to be a very important part of these projects, design, permitting, and bid documents. And we only received one proposal, and it was from Stantec, who also completed the initial analysis I was talking about. And so we met with them on July 10th in order to kind of nail down the scope, and we ended up reducing the scope of work to reflect the fact that we don't know, or that we basically have an uncertain process through here. We don't want to jump the gun on design when we don't know what our alternatives are going to be. And so the new scope covers data collection review, alternatives analysis, and that includes engineering and environmental permitting assessment. And basically the end result of this is going to be a permitting strategy and a basis of design report that we're going to be able to move into design. And yeah, we'll also be starting with the public outreach and coordination that'll be important to get this project permitted. And so yeah, like I said, these are two of many similar potential projects. We eventually want to take a programmatic approach to this, but this is kind of our first experience doing these types of projects in a non-emergency scenario. So we kind of want to use this as like a test case in order to figure out the best and most efficient way to implement these types of projects. And so, yeah, like I said, this task order basically takes us through planning and basis of design. And then in the future, we'll have another task order that would go through our traditional engineering design process, final permitting, bid document, so we can get this thing constructed. And so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? I got one. I guess for me, like when I think of our sewer lines and meadows and areas that have been restored, and obviously we're dealing with this at Johnson Meadow, so maybe not the first, opportunity for us to identify the issue necessarily, but if there's any way to find or piggyback onto the environmental improvement program with TRPA, because I guess my assumption is that obviously these things existed prior to a lot of the work that's being done to restore, meadow systems, that kind of thing. So it might be a really good opportunity to, and again, if there's restoration kind of component to these things, that maybe there's an opportunity to get a multi-benefit kind of project out of it. So I know obviously we're right in the beginning of it in terms of thinking about alternatives, but we think about the more broader issue at hand, which is a lot of these other areas that are identified as being at risk. So I think perhaps there's some opportunity to kind of start, including these things in the environmental improvement program, trying to find alternative funding, because obviously this is not going to be cheap to deal with. And so I guess I encourage that for sure.
Definitely. And yeah, like
thinking through this, I'm like thinking about the Trout Creek restoration that occurred, and then the Steve Goldman project in Lake Christopher. So like all these things started happening. I don't know to what extent back in the day SDPUD was at the table, but maybe there was a missed opportunity there. I don't know.
Yeah. And yeah, we definitely see mitigation of impact to our sewer system as like a requirement for these projects moving forward. I think in these projects where the damage is done, it's harder to do.
Right.
So we have been looking for grant opportunities to fund these sorts of projects, and I forget what the grant was, but I know that they were in discussion with one funding agency. And the issue with these projects, even though a lot of them would involve geomorphic enhancements of the creeks in order to make our sewer lines more resilient in the long term, they see these primarily as infrastructure protection projects and not as restoration projects, which are likely to get grant funding. And so I think that's going to be our challenge. And part of it is how we pitch it, right? Like some of these projects, like I think the Golden Bear project could potentially end up to be like a purely geomorphic enhancement project because incision there seems to be the problem. But yeah, other ones like this Lake Christopher project, I think it's a harder sell. But yeah, we definitely will keep looking for it. And then in the future, we've been much more plugged in now with the, I guess, creek restoration and stream restoration, meadow restoration community now. And so we have a lot of these other projects that we know are on the horizon on our radar. And so we're definitely going to make sure we're at the table and that we're advocating for protection of our infrastructure, or potentially using these projects as an opportunity, like you said, to have a multi-benefit project where, you know, maybe a reroute is the best option, and it would be a lower impact, easier, cheaper to do at the same time. So that's where we're at. I also wanted to note that we have funding this year in the CIP for design and planning, and then we have like a 2-year gap before we have capital funding because we expect this to be a very long planning and design project. So, won't happen overnight.
It's unfortunate considering the condition and the consequences that are potential, and unfortunately we can't hasten the, you know, planning and implementation. But I can appreciate the opportunity to look at alternatives and find other ways that are more long-term solutions to, you know, getting this stuff maybe out of these sensitive areas. But anyway, that's just kind of where I'm coming from.
And one thing that we were impressed by when we were speaking with Stantec is that their environmental planner on staff is really like adamant about looking for opportunities where these could be, our work like this could be covered under like general permits, so we won't have to go for individual permits for each of for all this work. So.
All right. Are there any other comments from the board? No? Are there any comments from the public?
I guess just, yeah, so this will create the template for all future exercises, so we're not going to see $200,000 to affect the time.
Yeah, we hope not. Yeah, and yeah, there are definitely different possible kind of templates that we can use in the future. And like, I know that Tahoe City, they've been doing water line replacements as progressive design builds, which allow them to do like a lot of work in a programmatic way. And I know there are other agencies that do like a lot of stream maintenance, creek maintenance work that end up getting like their own blanket permits from the regulatory agencies that allow them to do this sort of like long-term regular maintenance work. And so that is something that I think would eventually be worth pursuing for things like this. But at the same time, we got to deal with these now, and that takes even longer. And so it's kind of a balance between like addressing the highest priority projects right now while planning for a more efficient way to approach.
So what was that?
No, let me just, hold on, let me get back to that for a second. Like, so this, like, let's talk about speed. We're waiting 2 years after this, right? Best case scenario, and we have budgetary constraints. So frankly, I'm just going to disagree with you. I don't think spending money, like, I want to know the master plan. I want to see how this all pieces together. We're spending $200,000 just to decide what to do next. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But if you have the time to do it, and so I want to solve it and put like a more, you know, holistic view on how to solve this problem. Because otherwise, like, again, when I ask the question, is $200,000 will be the template? The answer is, well, in some ways, yes, in a permitting regimen, but we don't know what we're going to be doing everywhere else. It could be haphazard, so it could be another $200,000 later. Yeah. That's what I'd like to say.
Are you requesting that we maybe go back to Stantec and ask them to look at a more programmatic approach, which I'm more than happy to do. These are high priorities. The 2-year gap was just how we built out the 10-year CIP. We're working on rebuilding that. We know that maybe these become a higher priority and we move up that funding. But I hear what you're saying on it being a programmatic and trying to tackle all of these or come up with a plan so we know what we're doing. If you're asking for that, we would be more than happy to go back and kind of rescope it.
Well, it's just maybe inform me and change my position on it. It seems like if we're going to develop this plan now, there's a high priority to advance it. Yeah. We do have a gap in terms of time. And regardless, even if you have the design today, there's going to be a permitting window that's going to be relatively expensive. Right. And so what I'm saying is I think within the time frames we have, we can create this reality without creating any additional risk beyond what we've already accepted based on our timeline.
I agree.
And so what I'm saying, with this $200,000 and whatever else we increase upon it, we need to capture everything because we don't want to have to revisit this a second time.
Understood.
That can't be. We can't spend $200,000 just to figure out what to do next.
For every single one. I agree.
And so this needs to be did and we need to do it.
For me, so we will be creating a template during this project from a permitting perspective, right? And that's kind of more what I was referring to in terms of like something programmatic. Is like maybe there's a more streamlined way to permit these types of projects. But in terms of like the engineering and the technical components of each individual project, they're all different sites. And so it's going to be, unfortunately, the vast majority of $200,000 is going to be engineering analysis. And so I see it as something that this level of complexity is going to be required looking at each individual site, I think. Because they're all so different, and yeah, there's going to be, you know, you might need a pump station at one site. One site might be armor in place. Maybe you'll find a reroute at one site. Maybe you'll, you know, be able to make an inverted siphon work at one site. So
we have one other project that is on the CIP this year, and it's the main Powder Meadows project, which is addressing a lot of these high risk. We're talking about all those restoration projects and trying to get ahead of them. And so with that project, we wanted to involve a hydraulic analysis exercise to figure out what is our kind of master plan for all of these pipes. And so we have that as a separate project. It's just for these two, we knew that they were at the potential of imminent failure because of their locations and where they're at. It's a huge environmental risk that we have right now. So that's why we want to move these two forward. And we've got a lot of problem areas. The way our system was built, and it's really unfortunate.
So the $200,000, and what percentage is permitted coordination? Sorry, I'm not looking at
yeah.
Permitted coordination versus the engineering, right? Because to your point, I don't have to be an engineering design cost associated with each unique engineering kind of component. But is that 50%? Is that 75%? You know what I mean? I know that that's extremely around because each one's unique.
Yeah.
But you do have one that's like, as we look to the future, efficiency can be key. And money that's not spent on pipes or improvement is just like people don't like that. And we have to be very mindful of that. Like, you know, so that'll be my comment.
I guess for me, I do remember Evo, you know, going through this, and he's the one who stood up the Gulf Stream crossing assessment piece, and I appreciate you bringing that forward again, because I guess I kind of forgot about that. But clearly, there was a lot of things identified in the context of that review, and it does seem like it did tee itself up for like more of a programmatic solution. This whole concept of mains out of meadows, I think Shelley brought that up, but I think that's really key for us to help to leverage funding from grants or whatever, just to get ourselves at the table when, like for example, CTC, when they did their Lake Christopher project. Is there any liability on CTC for them exposing our pipes? Is that something that they didn't fully evaluate? There's some kind of compensation they can provide the district.
Yeah, and actually Shelley, Danielle, and I just met earlier this week. You know, we have a monthly meeting to kind of talk about these projects. We talked about mains out of meadows and looking for those partnerships and the funding for that. I mean, we did this with Forest Service for Baldwin Beach. We're working with them. They're doing a big restoration. We got ahead of it. We're doing our gravity improvements and moving our sewer and planning all of that work with their restoration project. So it's almost, that's a good template of how we can do these partnership activities, but we're trying to get ahead of it. We've got these partnerships building.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think
included.
getting the regulators getting on the table as well, just to kind of help them appreciate the breadth and scope of what we're going to be dealing with here. And it's not just these two. It's obviously they identified a lot of other things, a lot of other issues, and so I think it's a really good opportunity to figure out ways to streamline the permitting process and allow us to move forward on some of the stuff in a more cost-effective way, you know.
Definitely. And yeah, I definitely see the environmental planning portion of this task order is really to establish that template. It's to establish, like, what's our strategy here? How do we permit these types of projects? And so I think that we'd still be at a good stopping point at the end of this task order to look at, like, a programmatic permitting approach. So to answer the next question, about 25,000 of this is for environmental planning and permitting analysis.
The engineering part of it.
Yeah.
Site specific. We've got, I believe you have there's geotechnical investigation involved in these. So a lot of that is included in this. I don't think Mark mentioned it before as far as like to get that preliminary design and know what's needed. So that's included in here as well.
In terms of the range of alternatives considered, would it be one of which be getting out of meadow?
Yeah.
Or are we just looking at?
That's for the Lake Christopher one. We were looking about rerouting potentially.
There would be no non-pump station option for that, though. We already know that for sure.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, just this sounds really well, but I'll leave my comments there. Thanks for response.
Are you comfortable with where they are with it?
I mean, I guess the question would be, you know, so let's call that holistic kind of analysis. Based on what you said, kind of after my question, it doesn't appear in the immediacy actually, right? Because
This project?
12% of this is environmental planning. The remainder is going towards the design of this particular project that you need to do, or these projects at this particular stage, right? So that relatively can't be duplicated. And so, you know, I mean, I guess on each one of those is going to be some six-figure kind of design processes regardless. And so maybe looking at it in a more holistic manner now doesn't actually achieve much, right? It's time. And I don't know, I mean, and so that's probably, you know, to your comment, probably how I see it, is more like with the environmental reviews, and to Shane's point, we're looking at, like, how can we couple these things to make it as efficient as possible? And then, yeah, I mean, it's just going to be, so many of the things are costly, expensive, time-consuming effort. Yeah, and so for each one of these crossings, we'll have to develop alternatives.
Not all of them. So yeah, so in the Stantec analysis that they did for likelihood of failure, one of the things that we ended up having them include in the final memo that they produced was, is this a likely armor in place job? And so we know that like at least a large proportion of them are like rip-rap jobs, basically. And those could be done very efficiently, very quickly under one permit, probably, and with one contractor. But it just so happens that these very high likelihood of failure ones are typically more complicated than just a rip-rap job. And so they'll require generally more complicated planning and design.
And I think one of the issues with the Lake Christopher is just the inability to access the sewer lines currently. And if we did just do an armor in place, is that still a problem? And, you know, we're trying to make sure that we can get our eyes on all of our different infrastructure out there. And so that's why this one, you know, was brought to the top of the risk category, and why we want to really look at it and make sure that we're doing the best alternatives moving forward. So long term, we've got, we can maintain it, we can operate it, we can get our eyes on it. So.
No, I appreciate the additional comments. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah, I think you're getting a sense of like kind of where we're going with it, just thinking through, and I think even a big success with even just targeting some of those ones that just need something as simple as riprap, armoring or whatever. I would clean sheet pile in the ground anymore. But anyways, I think from a programmatic standpoint and trying to figure out what that looks like based on that crossing assessment, and I guess kind of baking that into the capital improvement program in some way to get some visibility on it and understand kind of what's going on there, I guess.
And yeah, I'll definitely make sure as we move into this project that the environmental permitting aspect of it is approached by our consultant in a holistic, programmatic way, and not necessarily like, oh, this is the project we're trying to complete, how do we do it? Because they're going to be reaching out to all the regulators and figuring stuff out, so I'll make sure that they're approaching it in that way so that we can apply it to other projects.
That would be really helpful. Yeah, let's get at the table and make sure everybody appreciates our challenges and see if we can't get in that funding pipeline if possible. That'd be great. Okay, no more comments from the board. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, what action would you like us to consider?
Approve the scope of work from Stantec Consulting Services Incorporated for engineering and planning services related to the Lake Christopher Golden Bear Sewer Rehabilitation Project, and authorize the general manager to execute task order number 3 with Stantec Consulting Services Incorporated in the amount of $199,577.25.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
That's right.
Sorry, guys.
Good questions. Good time.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to item 6 Blower Improvement Project. Brent.
Good afternoon, judges. I'm Brent Valgowski, Senior Engineer. I'm here to seek your approval for the amendment of task order number 24 with Corolla Engineers for the aeration blower improvements project. This amendment totals $146,866 and includes design and engineering additions necessary to meet current standards and improve system reliability. This work includes supporting the district during the bidding period, as well as wrapping up the design before we put out the bid. This work was completed on a time and material basis under our existing agreements with them. As some of you are aware, district staff recently made the difficult decision to cancel the bidding of this project prior to opening the bids. This decision was made to allow the approximately $8 million budgeted or planned for this project to be reallocated to make urgent repairs on the wastewater treatment plant ballast ponds. And so upon your approval of this task order amendment, we'll square up with Corolla and put this project on the shelf while we redirect our focus to the ballast ponds. Are there any questions from the board?
I know I have a question. I'm just trying to figure out what it is.
So you just take me through this. We're going to finish this exercise, and then this is going to be put on the shelf. So we're finishing an exercise, not to do anything with it? Temporarily.
So realistically, this one's already done. The work that we're paying for on this task order amendment has been completed by, this was wrapping up the design, getting out the bid. We got it out the bid, and just before we opened bids, we decided to cancel this. So this did buy us the final plan and specs. We'll have those. The services they did during bidding was about $20 grand in there. Those addendums and questions that they answered during bidding, we'll have those for the next time when we do the rebid. We'll be able to work those into the final plans of the rebid in the future. Right now, we're anticipating that's going to be about 3 years before we come back to this project. We need to do the ballast pump next year, and then we already have the return on expected sludge pumping station, the gas pumping station, scheduled for 2027 to start. That's our upload application out there, so that needs to stay on its timeline. And so as that is completed, our intent is to come back to this bonus project.
3 years.
Have these services already been provided?
Yes.
How come we didn't have a presentation prior to the work happening?
Yeah, this one was while that's on me, one that they continue to work towards in good faith to get this thing out to bid, even once they run out of their current funding. There was a couple things that happened with this project where a lot of work got added to them during design, and so they continue to work on it. Honestly, they're not even charging us for all the hours that they put into this. They're getting a lot of these costs, and so we're kind of sharing that. The additional work they put in to work in additional needs that came from us. We had rolled in multiple other scopes of work into this project that we thought we would get great economies of scale, getting this work done while we had an electrical contractor on site, while we had an HVAC contractor on site. And so working those into the plans in kind of the final month or two before we put it out to bid is a lot of what this is.
Did this only come about because it was canceled?
No, this was all, we were out to bid, we got through all of this at that point. This task order that I'm going to use now is a revision of the one that they had previously proposed that would have included this as well as services all the way through construction. So we actually have a much larger task order I was planning to bring to you. At the same time, I brought you the award of the construction project, so it would be bringing those at the same time. This is what it's going to cost to manage, as well as this is what it's going to cost to construct. So that was the intended timeline. This is a much smaller number than that would have been to get through construction. So we'll come back in 3 years with, needing funds to rebuild the project as well as to manage it through construction.
Well, I don't typically like to do business this way, but I can appreciate the fact that you guys were anticipating this kind of moving forward this year, and it was something that probably could have been buried in the I guess whatever proposed action would be coming our way to do that. But I guess in general, in the future, we could try to bring this stuff to us before we perform the services, so we.
Shane, that is the direction we will be taking going forward, not just on these consulting services contracts, but with our construction projects as well. I know the history has been that change orders come after that work's already been done and you're approving it after it's happened. And I've had a lot of conversations with our staff that we want to do that on a more frequent basis during construction so that you guys are aware of costs as they're happening. So totally understand.
I guess the only thing I can do, I mean, overwhelmingly I agree with you. Not to the point where we're calling these like unnecessary delays, when needed, like I'd rather
The general manager reported.
yeah, have Paul be an authorizing voice and then can bring it forward because, you know, most of these change orders, you know, by the time we get it, or kind of is what it is. So it's not like, I think like where I agree with Shane, but it's still, I don't want to, you know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think I maybe didn't explain all the context of that. When change events happen on a construction project, we typically move through that approval process, they continue working. But in the past, we've waited maybe till sometimes the end of the project to bring a balancing change order. That could be a very large number. And so what I want to do is as those changes stack up, maybe it's depending on the size of the project, it's every month the engineer would come or the construction manager would come to the board and make sure that you guys are aware that, like, yeah, there was some changes, here are the costs now, not seeing some huge number at the end of the project. So, yeah.
Okay, any more comments from the board? Seeing none, any comments from the public? Seeing none, what action would you like us to consider?
Approve the proposal to amend existing task order number 24 for Tahoe Engineers Incorporated for additional engineering services for the aeration water improvement project in an amount not to exceed $146,866, and authorize the general manager to execute Amendment B to task order number 24 to the master services agreement with Tahoe Engineers Incorporated.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Next,
Water treatment plant, ballast ponds evaluation and alternatives analysis.
yeah, here we go. So next, I'm seeking your approval to move forward with a condition assessment and alternatives analysis regarding the ballast ponds here at the wastewater treatment plant. These ponds are essential for flow equalization and storage, both for energy cost savings, as they allow time-of-use pumping with when power is less expensive, as well as providing critical redundancy during any plant disruptions. These ponds have suffered significant degradation, threatening our operational stability and compliance. And the attached proposal involves working with WSC, Water Systems Consulting, to conduct a comprehensive evaluation and alternatives analysis. This will include a geotechnical and structural assessments to identify subsurface and structural deficiencies, as well as developing rehabilitation options. They will craft up to 3 potential solutions, including detailed cost estimates and feasibility for each. Given the critical state of pond number 2 and the continuing issues with pond number 1, it is vital to move forward swiftly to maintain our treatment capabilities and meet our goal of completing construction in 2026. The proposed cost is $175,389, which aligns with our capital improvement plan and is funded from our existing budget. Thank you, and open any questions.
I will say that we walked out there during ops and it's pretty bad. So, and it's an unknown as to why it's happening. That's the biggest kind of gotcha.
Time when we load concrete, and it is eroded. It's been getting bad for a number of years. We've known about it for a number of years, and it finally pushed over the edge where operations was no longer comfortable using pond number 2. We've done some repairs last summer on pond number 1, got pond number 1 back in service, and now we're seeing pond number 2 is in even worse shape. And so rather than trying to do temporary repairs again and trying to work it through, it was decided that now's the time to do a full rehabilitation out there And so this task order will just be the condition assessment of the existing concrete, the existing soils beneath the concrete, determining, can we put, is there something that we can deal with what's out there, or are we tearing it out completely? And then options for what that looks like. Are we replacing it just like it is now, or is there opportunities for expansion, opportunities for changing the shape or the sizes, things like that would give us more operational flexibility. So we'll be looking into all that over the next couple of months, and then we'll come back with the results of that analysis before we move into design. But the timeline is to get this constructed next summer.
So that, when I'm clear, so, yeah, I'm going to do all and Adrian, it's really actually, especially on the two, popping up, it's got
Good voice.
I'm not in good shape at all. It's, and I guess it was something that was identified back in 2012 as being something that.
Yeah,
before 2018.
Yeah, significant condition assessment of all the concrete facilities in the plant in 2012, and this was identified as a pretty high priority at that time. It was medium, but definitely significant that we needed to do something. At that time, we had put it on the capital plan for 2018. And it's just continued to get pushed out with other priorities coming forward. So,
yeah, so I guess, all the questions are, well, they had conditions as of 2012, that's an issue. This is just another, I guess, maybe a more detailed kind of evaluation where we get better concept in terms of what we would actually do.
Exactly.
So, anyway.
yeah, so this will involve actual geotech, boring beneath the concrete slab, boring beneath the walls, boring the surrounding soils, to figure out, what is the support out there. We're not building a dam, but pretty close. And so it's fairly significant to make sure we're building something that's going to hold up and is going to get us, another 30 to 50 years.
And this, for awareness, this is about $5 to $10 million project?
Yeah.
So our preliminary estimate is we are replacing concrete. I'm not being super hopeful, but if this condition assessment shows that potentially there's a liner option, that would be a lot cheaper than having to do all new concrete. So that's why we want to make sure we get this condition assessment done and limit them to 3 options and move this forward. It is fast track. One thing Brent didn't mention, but I believe it was in the agenda item, is that in order to move the RAS project forward, we have to have this operational storage available. And so that's why this project was moved forward. We made the difficult decision to push the blower. Can't do them all at once.
To put it in perspective, they would push to the ERB before they push here to DOS too. So.
Lord, does break my heart.
I know it does.
Yeah.
I know.
You know, we're taking them off to solar after this.
No, I know you already have that. I said so many other ones were in the meeting I was perpetually optimistic and perpetually frustrated. So it's just my personality, y'all know. But I guess the thing is, like, in 2012, what was the value of that? And obviously I'm not being critical of people now, but what would, if you go back a couple of agenda items to this, like, there's a parallel, like, there's a connection in my mind, and that anybody that doesn't get anything, and this isn't to relocate 2012, but just simply to use it as an example, that didn't do anything for us. That sat on a shelf, just like we talked about, and didn't do anything for us. With where we are budgetary, we talked about this, like, that can't happen. We can't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on meetings of paper, and we don't get paper anymore just because it's in the computer. So that has to be example. It's just using this as an example and really working in those terms. I know things happen, but just as you again, just citing this.
Understood. Yeah, I know. It's the cyclized thing is it gets on the list, right? 2012 gets the budget on the list. It gives us an estimate. It gets it on the capital plan. And then what we've always done is every year we reevaluate priorities. And so this is one that was a priority then. It's always been a priority. It's been on the 10-year plan. As far as I can tell, every year since, it just has always gotten pushed out. And now it got to the point of failure, and now we have to bring it forward. And, unfortunately, I personally expect that to happen time and time again, because we have so many of these condition assessments out there that have identified these needs, but we can only do as much as we can afford, and we can only do as much as we have the staff to manage. And, it's a tough reality that obviously we've done a lot of thinking about, having to delay a project of this magnitude to react to a project that we've known about as long as we have. Been really hard for me too, really frustrating. And so it's a lot of thought and, you know, how do we get ahead of this? How do we keep this from happening again? How do we get those master plans off the shelf, those condition assessments off the shelf? So that we're not redoing it again, and that we're actually moving forward with these projects. You know, I think I've got a lot of hope with Megan, you know, I really do. It really has been a real shift in our attitude and a real shift in our department, and I think, you know, we're going to see that this fall as we go through capital planning. You know, we're going to really shift some more priorities again. And so we'll see what this next generation does.
Any comments, questions?
I just don't know, maybe like we want these assessments to kind of sit at like a level that we like, make sure they don't get put back on the shelf, right? Like, I think that's more like where we're kind of going. Like, I don't want to see it get done and then all of a sudden we just kind of forget about it because we haven't talked about it at a board meeting for X amount of time. So.
Because as we went back to get a time machine, we had a DeLorean, and was go back in 2012. We knew it wasn't going to happen anytime in the near future. I bet in 2012. And so that's what I'm saying. So like, I appreciate that, you know, what you said about to push back a little bit. I know that's the case. And so to do aggressive analysis on something you actually have no intent to do is spending money unwisely, and spending other people's money unwisely. And so to highlight these things only give you things that could be 5 years out, 7 years out. Codes are going to change, soils, like things will change in the future. So, you know, taking steps that won't be fruitful down the road in a sense of delay, and yeah, I'm being redundant, but should be something to be avoided. But I do, you know, appreciate, you know, what we talked about, Chris, like just the dynamics that exist with imperfections. So it's not like it's an indictment, but just as a comment, we look at it on our belt and every way possible.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing is that, like, as we do these, like, systematic condition assessments, that we're keeping those very high level. We're not spending a lot of time getting into the details because the details may change. And so that way, that when we then do get closer to it, and at this stage, this is when we do the real work, and we haven't already spent that money once, and then we'll do it again.
Yeah, you can look at concrete and those failing without spending money.
Right.
But just in terms of I guess the implications of the cascading effect, this kicking the blower project down the road, what does that mean? Is that a big issue? Looking at Aaron.
Yeah, we're going to have a balance pond situation.
The ponds were scheduled for 29, so it's actually just blocking places, basically.
Yeah, I mean, are we really critical on the blowers? Like, as critical as we are with ballast ponds, I guess?
No.
Okay.
It was a collective decision. Aaron was involved in that decision making. Adrian was at the table, Paul was at the table. It was not just done in a vacuum. We had a long conversation. It was a very difficult decision.
I just know I'm seeing still here.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is that we totally share the board vision on energy efficiency, and this is one of those projects where we were super excited about, right? And so it was one of the toughest decisions that I've made in my career, is taking something that we saw such a great benefit that we were going to get from and moving. I mean, Brent has worked tirelessly on this project, and the amount of hours he spent, and to see it be moved, I mean, it was a lot.
Rewarding him with the ballast pond is not really making it hard.
Yeah, you know, the blowers themselves always make it, right? If you go back 10 years on capital plan, it would have said we were replacing all blowers. We did some condition assessments on those a couple of years ago, had, you know, rehab, similar like the pumps, and they looked at them and they're like, we don't have to do anything. These are great blowers. The pumps themselves are in good shape. They're just not nearly as efficient as this new one. And so that's why the blower project was only going to buy one, high efficiency one, continue to use the existing one. So we'll get him the blowers. We just had a meeting with Jared. We're talking a lot of this project was electrical equipment replacement. He's feeling okay about it. There's a few transformers that were included for replacement. We're monitoring those every year now. Might even be twice a year. We're testing the oil, things like that. So there's definitely more maintenance on some of this equipment that is very old that we were hoping to replace. There's a few other aspects that we're talking about right now. Can we do those sooner, or are they going to wait all the way to the blowers? We may have some opportunities to roll something with the gas project so that they're getting done sooner, such as these transformers. fire alarms, you know, if it's a big safety concern, there's multiple buildings without fire alarms, without working fire alarms, should we move those forward? So we're having all those kinds of conversations. Some of the HVAC improvements we're going to need to do for the lab, do some of this regulatory stuff. So some of those pieces that we have put into this to try to get that economy of scale, we're going to have to pull out and do sooner. So we're working on how we do that.
Well, and that, can you or Adrian just take a moment to talk about, by pushing out the blowers, though, we are creating an opportunity to add some additional infrastructure improvements in that can create even more efficiencies.
Yeah, so there was one big piece of the original blowers design alternatives that we had cut out and held off on just for funding reasons, really, which was replacing the air headers, which is the air pipe that goes from the blower building out to the aeration basins. Those we know are failing. We TV'd those many years ago as well. We know there's holes in them. We know that the high air literally leaks out of the ground and melts the snow above it. We know those are in bad shape. When we got the original cost estimate, we said, we can't spend this money now. Let's put that out further. Let's come back and do those. The general consensus of everybody is, let's do those with the blower project in 2028. And so, I mean, as soon as we pick this design back up, we'll get that piece worked back in. When we did the energy audit in 2017, we did some airflow meters along the pipeline, and we determined that a third of the air we're using, a third of the air is getting wasted out of those pipes, those leaky pipes, and a third of the air we're wasting on purpose because we don't have a good way to control the speed of those blowers. And so this project was going to take care of one third of that. We won't have to waste on purpose anymore. But now we're talking, we'll fit that other third in, replace the air headers as part of this project. This will give us time to plan that and set up the budget so that we have the money to do that. Now, 28.
Very good. Any more comments, questions? Seeing none, any comments or questions from the public? What action would you like us to consider here?
Approve the proposed scope of work from Water Systems Consulting Incorporated for the wastewater treatment plant ballast pond evaluation and alternatives analysis, and authorize the general manager to execute task order number 7 under the master services agreement with Water Systems Consulting Incorporated in the amount of $175,389 for professional consulting services to complete the wastewater treatment plant ballast pond evaluation and alternatives analysis.
Almost.
Moving on to 6G.
Last action item here. This one focuses on the sewer modeling support task order, which is necessary for upgrading our sewer systems hydraulic modeling software. We typically issue a task order annually for a consultant to support us with our hydraulic modeling, and this will be our second year working with WSC. The primary objective this year is to replace our outdated InfoSwim software and as well as extend our model to cover every one of our pipes in our system, so that we can ensure we get comprehensive flow estimates. We currently use our model to support the prioritization and design of all of our sewer collection system projects, as well as troubleshooting during high flow events, wet weather events, trying to figure out where that water is going and coming from. It's also used to evaluate our capacity for any new large developments. With this proposal, WSC will assist us in this process, including software selection, model conversion, and ongoing support. And this is all within our budget for these services, just under $90,000. Do I have any questions for this time?
This is an easy one. I guess I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I'm just curious. So is this helpful in us better identifying, targeting our I&I issues?
Exactly. Okay. That's exactly what we just said. So we've had a sewer model since 2009. Collection system master plan, developed it. We've updated it and recalibrated it multiple times. The flow monitoring that we do, the wet weather events that we've collected data on, all that comes back into this model, recalibrates the model, gives us a more accurate picture.
And then as part of our CIP this year, we will have a better map showing where we need to do our targeted work on that stuff.
WSC is helping us with that effort. So Fred and I, this past year, have been working with them on evaluating the I&I reports that we've done in the past and the data that we've collected. And so part of it is we also need to take some time and invest the money in our sewer flow monitors so that we can possibly move them around and really pinpoint where we're getting the I&I and then develop a project to mitigate that. So, yeah. WSC is on board to help us with that.
Any comments or questions from the public? Saying what would you like us to consider today?
This one is approve the proposed scope of work for the Water Systems Consulting Incorporated for sewer modeling support and authorize the general manager to execute task order number 8 under the master services agreement with Water Systems Consulting Incorporated in the amount of $89,432 for professional consulting services for sewer modeling support services.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, standing and ad hoc committee and liaison reports.
And I was able to attend ECC yesterday. Was happy to attend. Forgive me, I can't recall the booth I was served, but it was out of deep respect for Canada. Freedom of food is much fun to eat as it is to say. Am I Canadian? I know. Sorry, maybe that came out of it showing, but no. No,
Yes, I do. Jealous.
I always really like that event. I think it's a very positive thing to participate into as a board member. I think in particular, we'll get into some of the meters, but I love the kudo session where everyone goes around and can thank, teams and individuals and so forth, and how they helped them out and kind of contributed to the overall support. I also really appreciated some of the discussion in terms of things we had talked about kind of the board level and being implemented in terms of leadership training, opportunities, kind of grow the culture and ethic of SCPD with all the new staff members and how to maintain that as we go forward. I thought that was incredibly positive. Overwhelmingly, I guess one of the things for my comments, one item of kind of discussion that seemed to go back and forth more with the rest was kind of discussion regarding remote work and how that was going to be applied, so on and so forth. Just reiterate my comments, always it needs to be effective and we need to make sure people with young families can be can work in interest. As a society, we have to support families, otherwise no one can pay for us to be able. It's really important. And so I want to reiterate that. And then ultimately, I think my comments to ECC really align with what I said today is, the challenge, I think, what the district has done in the basin and more broadly is led by example of environmental measures, through solar, through what we've done for, rate assistance to our community and so forth. And what we need to do now is, as rates for everything and everything continue to rise, and to the basis of our conversations at budget meeting, how do we bring those spaces together, given redundancy challenges and everything we've discussed today, and that really being a great focus. But why I'm so optimistic tonight is the leadership training, the great culture, and all these other different things. So, again, really thankful to be there. Really positive meeting. And I got my shirt. So thank you.
When's the next ECC meeting?
2 months? Yeah.
And then who was on target from the board? I always get.
Want to trade? No. I mean, I'm at home with the breakfast.
Yeah. I think every time I've been, it's been breakfast burritos, which is fine. But. I think I am.
I spoke last week. I had a telephone conference with Justin Williams from MUN CPAs, and this was in reference to the upcoming independent audit, which they have already started gathering information. They gave kudos to staff, said very cooperative, everything's done in a timely fashion. They did mention Mr. Henderson's mother, that everything had been so smooth with Debbie, and they were pleasantly surprised that she trained everybody well, I guess. And and I think Susan was here yesterday on site. Yeah, so they have been on site. This is just typically they reach out to a board member, someone who's on the finance committee, and they also ask if, he asked if I had any questions or concerns, which I didn't, but I said I would pass that on to the rest of the board. So if you do, I have his contact information, and we should be expecting a presentation in December. Yeah.
And as always, once they are complete with their lives, actually it occurs while they're here doing their presentation, or prior to it, prior to the board meeting, they will meet with the two of you individually first, like in the conference room, and go over it and answer any questions or concerns you may have before they present to the whole board.
Joel, you got anything?
Yeah, we went over a lot of what was handled in ops for the most part. Basically, the other stuff is just the Elks Club well being offline for now to be determined. But Bakersfield and El Tahoe Bayview, those projects have begun and kicked off. And if anybody's driven on Pioneer Trail, you've seen the foam temporary shelter that's been built. I actually rode by on my bike on Cattleman, and pretty cool. I wasn't sure what they were doing with all that stuff back there, but it looks pretty cool, and I thought that was pretty nice of us to do, to not annoy the neighbors too much. But and then yes, some poly bid was accepted. Obviously, the ballast ponds Luther we saw today, and then just kind of some hot topics with the Pioneer Trail project out from ski run to 50 of just maybe some operational changes coming in the future on what we can do with that stuff. So, but maybe you have something to add.
Okay, if I could just add a couple things. They were drilling a test well over at the Cattleman site. They hit rocks, so we did not find water there. I know, probably should have got a water witcher out there first. Yeah. But they have had really good luck at the other the Tanglewood site, and so we're expecting to get a good well there. One thing I wanted to add on, just so that the board knows, I think we covered this very briefly in Ops Committee, but we do have a something going out in our next bill. What is it called? A bill insert? Bill insert, and it's regarding a monitoring violation we had for chromium 6. It was a new regulation. We've always monitored for total chromium, and we've always been below the chromium 6 MCL for total chromium. So by doing that math, we were below chromium 6, but since getting that monitoring violation, we have tested all of our wells. We're obviously below the MCL for chromium 6, but there is a letter going out to everybody just to inform them of that. And it does give them the results of our testing that we were below.
It sounds like they found the Timber Cove thing.
Yeah, and
not us.
Yeah, there was high E. coli levels over at Timber Cove, which is like right behind the Tahoe Beach Retreat, I believe that hotel is called. We had cleaned all of our sewer lines. We went out to go and inspect. This was the Friday before Labor Day. We did TV all of our lines out there. We didn't find any issues, and the day after we finished all of our investigation, they found a sewer lateral that was at the restaurant that's on the pier that had like a separated joint, very similar to what happened at Camp Richardson. But the Water Board very much appreciated our effort to look through our lines and make sure it wasn't us.
And just real quick, is that mailing, is that required by the state?
Yeah, it's a requirement by DDW. So we received a violation notice. It told us everything we needed to do to comply with that. And we did all of the testing before sending out the notice. Previously, we had been grandfathered into the chromium 6 not having a test because of our levels of total chromium. But there was a change in the regulation at the end of last year that we missed. And that's why we didn't get that very specific chromium 6 testing done.
So the mailer just says everything's fine?
Yeah, so basically it says that there was this regulation, that we needed to monitor for chromium 6 by a certain date, that we missed that date, but however, since then we have done all of the testing and that the levels are below the MCL.
It's a very state format that we have to follow by law.
No, that's why I'm going to leave it on.
Yeah. Sounds like we're getting a little bit of latitude in terms of how we phrase the letter. Not much? No? Okay. I guess the only one thing maybe we didn't cover as part of ops was the potholing that's continuing and for the testing of the lead services. So, or just making sure we don't have like, yeah. So anyways, it sounds like they have about 400 bucks or so.
Actually, it's better than that. So just, I guess, a quick update on the lead service line inventory project. We had completed the desktop study, and we needed to pothole service lines to identify material. There's 369 locations identified through a random sampling based on decades of the decade a house or a building was built. And it mostly consisted of we needed to pothole on both the district side of the meter and the customer side of the meter. So call it 700 or so potholes. As of today, we've got about 250 left. And we expect to have that done before Thanksgiving, possibly before November. And if we complete that and we don't find any lead service lines, which we have not found any lead service lines to date, then we won't be required to send out all the letters to notify people that they might have a lead service line like we did last year. And so we're very much hoping to get this complete. In fact, we will get this complete before the end of the year. And as long as we don't find lead service lines, we won't be sending out those letters again this year.
So please extend my gratitude to the crew who's doing that. I can't imagine it being too much fun for them and digging one hole after another to determine that, hey, guess what, there's no lead here. Okay, great, move on. But anyways, I appreciate their work on that.
Yeah, and yeah, just the underground repair water crew has been the crew that's been doing that. On top of that, they're fixing leaks day and night, and so they've really had a long dig season this year, but they are getting a lot done for this district. So definitely appreciate that crew very much.
All right, I don't have anything else on committee or ad hoc. Paul, did you have anything to add?
Nothing to add.
No? Okay, any board member reports? Yes. No? Moving on to item 9, staff and attorney reports, cybersecurity update. Chris?
Good afternoon, directors. Chris Skelly, IT manager of Tahoe Public Utility District. Want to start off before my update and say that the nature of the district's IT tactics and techniques and their incident response are sensitive. So I can't divulge a whole lot of detail during this update, but I'll try to answer your questions to the best of my ability. About a month ago, local agencies all around the basin, a lot on the South Shore, were experiencing a cyber attack, primarily through email. And we had a few staff members within the district actually received the email. The district was notified at the end of a business day. And so we started our investigation late that day, actually found an account that was somewhat compromised. And the next day we finished up our investigation and remediation by noon the next day. We had heard from actually Shelley that this attack was going on, and then through our counterparts at the city of South Tahoe actually went to look for it, and so we were able to expedite that process. From all of the investigation we've done, there was not any outbound email sent on behalf of the district that wasn't meant to be sent. So that was really the primary attack vector, is they would take over your email accounts, resend their email to gain access to other email accounts that you had contacts for. None of that happened from our system because of measures we took ahead of time, just based on our MESAC involvement and best practices and how to set up email tenant. So with that, I'd like to kind of move into what we're doing now, which is kind of exciting. The district we won of 94 local, tribal, and territorial agencies. State had their own sort of section of this grant program of the CalAS state local grant program funding. And we were authorized for about $187,000 for cybersecurity projects. And so the district identified 3, and we got approval from CalAS, FEMA, CISA, and one other federal agency proceed with those. And so we were awarded the grant, and one of the projects would have automatically identified this, alerted IT, and remediated it automatically for us. And so that project is actually already moving on and in progress to be implemented here shortly, And, yeah, I'm excited to continue to help add on to our layer of cybersecurity, both in depth and in breadth. So with that update, I'd like to answer any questions you may have.
No, great work as always. For an attack like this, I mean, what's the goal? And, just forgive my ignorance with that, what would be the goal of something like this?
There could be a few. It could be just cause mass chaos, right? Just send out a bunch of emails and see how far you can make this worm spread throughout different email boxes. Another one could be kind of a sit and wait, see what kind of information you can get that might be detrimental to a government organization's reputation. I'm sure there's always that I'm not thinking about right
So
now.
so was it like so basically somebody received an email from somebody they were familiar with, right? So it was an automatically assuming that it was, this is blah, 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 the city or TRPA or whatever. And so they had like a link to a SharePoint or something like that, or did it appear to be
It appears to be a legitimate email. Yeah.
How did that work? So somebody would have put on that link.
We didn't actually see it clicked on, but what ended up happening was the affected computer created a rule unknown to the user that would look at any email and forward it off to the attacker, but then also mark that email as read if it contains certain words like hack or compromise or link, and move it into a folder that isn't routinely checked in Outlook. So you wouldn't even know you got an email that warned you not to click on a link if your account was affected.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. ID, Shelley.
Good afternoon. Shelley Compton, Director of Public and Legislative Affairs. Look at that shirt, Shane. I mean, it's going to look so good on all of you. Just a reminder that our 75th anniversary open house is in a week, Wednesday, September 24th from 4 to 6 here. We'd love to have you all attend. If you do attend and you would like, all staff is planning on wearing that T-shirt that day to identify you as a person to chat with about STPUD. So we'd love for you to do the same. Also, at our next board meeting in October, the date is eluding me, that first meeting in October, Melanie's been working on a resolution for us to commemorate the 75 years, what we've done as a district. We'll also have some cake and celebration, so if you're not able to attend next week, we'll see you at the board meeting the following week.
Is there any staff or board members that are still around from the beginning?
The beginning? Probably not. I'm not sure what may have happened. They probably aren't around. I can see at least a few of our prior employees that have retired, wanting to come to this event. Yeah.
Yeah, we've invited our agency partners, community organizational partners, as well as the community went out in the bills, as well as press releases and outreach. So a lot of chatter, some chatter on social media. We even had a few people show up yesterday hoping it was yesterday, and we told them you're a week early. So yeah, this is, we're owned by the people of this community, and this is really the first time we've ever done an open house. First time we offered public wastewater treatment plant tours this spring, but this is a really exciting celebration.
So that's part of the event is doing walk around.
Yeah, we're going to have wastewater treatment plant tours leaving about every 15 minutes, an abbreviated tour, about a half an hour. We're going to feature some of our large equipment out front, our CCTV truck, valve truck, most of any equipment water uses will likely be out in the field being used as we speak. But we'll see what equipment we get, for.
That's the old stuff, so they know that we need new equipment.
For folks to check out. In the boardroom, we'll have various stations featuring the different aspects of our system. So the lab is very excited. They have all sorts of different little experiments they're going to do at their table. They're very excited about it. At our water table, we've got maps showing upcoming projects that we're planning, the display of our old pipe, new pipe, of just really how much work we've done in the last 10 years upsizing water infrastructure for fire. Sewer table, Lauren told me I wasn't allowed to bring in the robot that goes down the sewer pipes because it's too gross, but we will be talking about our sewer collection system. We'll have a recycled water table, a table for customer service, really trying to promote our customer assistance program. We're also attending Barton's community health fair to try to promote our customer assistance program as well. So yeah, lots of opportunities to learn more about the district, mingle, see behind the curtains of the wastewater treatment plant, and celebrate that really for 75 years we've been keeping poop out of the lake, and that's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Well, I hope it goes well. I sadly will be out of town, so I look forward to the October 2nd.
Thank you, Shelley. Do we have an idea of how many people might be showing up?
No, I've got several responding emails to me, though. I mean, I have a feeling we're going to have many more than we get for our rate increase.
That's good. Cool. All right. Well, let's move on. I think we are general manager report.
Yeah, and I just have a couple of things, and then we'll have a quick closed session, and then we'll take a walk out to the solar plant. So recently, Adrian was approached by the Alpine County School District requesting to use our property at DVR for their cross-country team practice. We think that's a great idea, just a way to build a relationship with the other agencies down there. And they have insurance, of course, and so they can list us as an additional insured. And then we're working with Ryan to draft up some sort of an indemnification clause that they can sign, and then we'll be good to go. Then the other thing I have is recently we were approached by the individual who is the developer for the extensive rehabilitation or revitalization, to use it that way, but revitalization of the Tahoe Marina for us to provide water service to them. And they, of course, are in the Tahoe Keys POA water service area. So we did have a conversation with them to get an idea of what their plans are. But then I stopped the conversation there and said, I don't want to talk about it anymore, so we had a chance to talk to TKPOA to determine if they are already planning to provide water service to them or not. Because I'd rather not step on their toes if they're planning to provide water service. So anyway, we have a call with them, myself, Adrian, and Megan are going to talk to them tomorrow at 9:30 as well as Jen, who's going to be managing their water system for them right now. And so we'll have some more info to report out at the next meeting.
Great. Thank you. We can talk about it in the box as well, but if you want to steal your time. Okay, I think we're going to close this meeting. Thank you, everybody. Nothing closed session with nothing to report.
We'll come back here, or?